Bonjour, Daja Hao, and welcome to Frenchy Teaches Cocktail. I'm Frenchy, and today I'm going to teach you how to make an old fashioned. This is episode 1 of a series where we are going to discover classic cocktail. And to me, each of these classic cocktails actually represent a whole category of drinks. So today, by learning how to make one old fashioned, you're actually learning how to make 100 of different variations of that drink. It is its own category and it's based on a specific ratio of spirit. Today we're going to use American corn whiskey, aka bourbon, water in the form of ice, and here I have a tad of liquid water, sugar. Here I'm using golden sugar crystals, bitters, here Angostura bitters, probably one of the most classic bitters there is, actually one of the oldest brands with special. It's the only 2 bitters that are pre-prohibition. Then we're gonna have an orange for the nose, for the smell, for the aroma as a citrus. As for tools, nothing complicated here, something that we all have in our kitchens, hopefully. So a basic rocks glass, a small spoon, a chopstick, a peeler, and a knife. Alright, without further ado, I'm going to proceed to make a classic old fashioned. We're going to start with a little bit of sugar. Don't overdo it. I'm not trying to make a sweet drink here. So a little spoon of sugar. We're gonna add a little bit of water. Sugar does not melt well in alcohol, so it's best to help it along with a splash of water. You'll see Bartender using soda water, carbonated water. The carbonic acid in it actually helps dissolve the sugar a little bit faster, but still water is perfectly fine, no problem with that. We're gonna add a little bit of Angostura. There is a built-in dasher, but be careful. I'd rather go on the side than vertically. You have more control this way. So about 3 to 4 dashes of Angostura, or learn to make it to taste. You're gonna help that sugar melt a little bit more. It's okay if it's not melted all the way. It doesn't need to be. By the time we finish the drink, it should be. Then we're gonna have to add our ice. The weather is quite warm here. It's melted quickly, but this is a standard cheap ice sphere mold. I'm gonna drop it inside. And here we're gonna use a chopstick as a stirring stick. If you use this kind of spoon, it gets annoying. You cannot roll it through your finger. Simple chopstick, it's round, it's easy to stir. Then we're gonna add roughly 45 ml of spirit. Or a little more if you feel like that. Give it a bit more stirs. So the drink is served on ice. It will keep melting over time. So you don't need to serve it, you don't need to stir it a lot. And then finally, we're gonna add some aroma in the form of citrus oil. To get a good peel, have a small incision, lock it with your fingers, go all the way down. This orange has been washed. There is often a little wax or some sort of coating on the outside to preserve it longer. It's not great to have that in your drink. You should wash your citrus before you use it in any cocktail. We're gonna spray the oil over the glass. We don't need to be too close. The goal is to have a smell all around. So 1, 2, 3, a little twist. And then I'm not gonna rub the lip of the glass. I'm not looking to have those oil on my own lips when I'm drinking. It's not very pleasant. So instead, we're gonna rub the outside of the glass. This way, that smell is gonna linger with me as I'm drinking my old fashioned. Finally, if I want to put the peel inside the glass, I'll have to remove the piece. The piece would impact bitterness over time and simply ruin the drink. So use a knife and remove as much of that white part as possible. Then we're going to simply add the peel inside the glass. And for all intents and purposes, this is a perfectly acceptable old-fashioned. Think of an old-fashioned almost as cooking a steak. The star of the show is your protein, or here, your spirit. We are just looking to cook it well using our ice. We use ice instead of fire in the bar, and we are trying to season it with a little bit of sugar to smooth out that alcohol edge, provide it a little bit more depth with bitters, and then covering the ethyl smell with that citrus oil. And when you try and get your first sip of an old-fashioned, the orange is the first thing you have on the nose. You still have the bourbon, it's here supporting, but it's not as rough, it's not as strong as it would be if it was neat. Then the body of it is fully the whiskey. The bourbon here is completely present. We didn't lost it in the mixing. Then we have a hint of sweetness and a bit of bitterness to provide that depth. And this covers that alcohol edge. This is incredibly small and comfortable. So you might wonder, what kind of spirit should you use in an old-fashioned? By default, I'd say bourbon or rye, American whiskies. They are the most classic in an old-fashioned. However, as I say, an old-fashioned is a blueprint of a category of cocktail, where the spirit is just smoothed out using sugar, bitters, ice, and a citrus and an aroma. But then you can play with any kind of spirits. The first old-fashioned were most likely made with either Dutch Jenever or French brandy, aka cognac. Those were the first spirits imported to early America at the turn of the 19th century, early 1800s. However, modern old-fashioned, such as a Oaxaca old-fashioned, uses a blend of tequila and mezcal, and there is as well a treacle, which is a rum old-fashioned with a splash of apple juice. As you saw, nothing complicated. It can be made at home without requiring any specific bartending tools. However, I'm still going to show you how we would make it in a craft cocktail bar. So we're going to gear up and step up our game a little bit. Alright, so let's pro it up and use a tool of the trade. We're going to start with a jigger. A jigger is a measuring tool. You use it all the time for every single drink. It's a bartender's best friend. It allows you to stay consistent, to not overpour, to not underpour, to pinpoint your recipe to the milliliters. This is actually a classic American jigger. It's a 2 to 1 ounce jigger, 60 to 30 ml. It has some inside marking as well, 1.5 on one side, 3/4 and half. So 45 ml, 22.5 and 15 ml. Then we're gonna need a bar spoon. A bar spoon is both a measuring tool as well as a stirring tool. It has that spiral pattern that allows it to roll easily in your finger while you are stirring. Then, instead of pouring Angostura from its original bottle, we're gonna use a bitter dasher. Those dash about 1 ml consistently, as long as you don't overfill them or underfill them. It's important to keep the dasher between 1/3 to 2/3 capacity so it has a consistent dashing. Lastly, instead of trying to melt my sugar on the spot, in a bar I wouldn't have the time to do that for every single drink, we're gonna use a Demerara syrup. A Demerara syrup is brown sugar syrup. Traditional ratio calls from 2 to 1. I find that a little bit too rich and it tends to recrystallize in the bottle. Here I used a 1.5 to 1 ratio. I actually went for 100 grams of brown sugar that you saw, of golden sugar, like you saw earlier, with 50 grams of brown sugar and 100 ml of water. Bring it to a low boil to make sure everything is well melted, let it cool, bottle it. It should last about 2 weeks in the fridge. Hopefully you'll use it much faster. And finally, I'm going to be using a slightly nicer glass here. This kind of very thin glass are very popular in Asia. I love them. If they're very, very light, they do break easily, so you got to be careful. Alright, let's start and make an old fashioned. We're going to start with the sweetener, a bar spoon of Demerara syrup. A small bar spoon. Once again, don't overdo it. We are not trying to make a sweet drink here. Then we're gonna add 4 dash of Angostura bitters. For them to work properly, you have to flip them upside down and dash vertically. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have our sugar, we have our bitters. I'm gonna proceed to add a nice chunk of ice that I'm going to carve using a knife here. First, clear the sides. Then we're going to work on the edges. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And right here we have a beautiful ice gem that I'm going to lower delicately inside my glass. Finally, our spirit. Here I'm going to use the standard American pour 45 ml right in. Give our fashion a few stirs. We're going to lift that ice cube a couple of times to make sure everything is well mixed. And finally, we're gonna work our orange. So same incision up top, lock it with your finger, drag it down. We spray our oil all over the glass, not too close. Same, we are still not rubbing the lip, but the outside of the glass. And we're gonna attempt a garnish. Here, I'm not gonna put the peel inside the glass, so I do not need to remove the piece. We're gonna make a nice shape, incision in the middle, stick it to the side of your glass. And here we go. This way, that orange smell, that orange oil will stay close to my nose as I'm drinking. Fantastic. So, as you see, with a little bit of prep and the tool of the trade, it's much easier to make an old fashioned and much faster. Presentation does matter in a craft cocktail bar. Hey guys, that was episode 1 of Frenchy Teaches Cocktails. Today we learn how to make an old fashioned. I'm gonna enjoy my drink, and you guys please hit the subscribe button. I'll see you soon. Bye bye, au revoir, 再见.